Welcome back to Night's Embrace, where the embers of forgotten ages still glow softly in the darkness, and the most carefully guarded secrets of the cosmos finally reveal themselves in whispered truths. The fire burns low beside us tonight, its wavering light casting shadows that seem to dance with deception. For tonight we uncover the greatest lie ever told. In our last journey together, we walked among the final free peoples of the ancient world, those proud civilizations who lived beneath stars that belonged to no single will, who drew their magic from earth and flame and spirit rather than cosmic mandate. We felt the weight of that profound silence, the stillness that comes just before the world shifts on its axis forever. But what if I told you, dear listeners, that everything you believe about divine intervention, everything you've been taught about the Golden Order's sacred origins, was built upon the broken whispers of an abandoned God, that the very foundations of cosmic authority rest not upon divine truth, but upon the desperate fabrications of a forgotten daughter waiting eternally for a message that would never come? Tonight we witness not the glorious arrival of divine order, but the most sophisticated deception in the history of the cosmos. We will follow two falling stars, one bearing truth, one bearing lies, as they descended from the lightless void to reshape reality itself. We will uncover how Metyr, Mother of Fingers, that first gleaming herald of the greater will, became the architect of a cosmic fraud that would deceive gods, demigods, and mortals alike for countless ages. This is the story of how a single broken communication transformed into an empire of divine lies, how the two fingers, those supposed vessels of celestial wisdom, spent centuries delivering guidance from a void that had long since turned away. This is how an entire world learned to worship and echo, and how the greatest truth in all the lands between became the greatest deception. So settle deeper into your chair. Let the firelight illuminate these shadow-wrapped revelations, and prepare yourself for a tale that will forever change how you see every golden blessing, every divine commandment, every sacred truth you thought you understood. The greater will has turned its attention to our small world among the stars, but what it left behind was far more terrifying than what it took away. Chapter 1. The First Deception. In the vast darkness between stars, where light takes millennia to travel from one world to another, something ancient stirred with purpose. The greater will, that cosmic consciousness dwelling in the lightless abyss beyond mortal comprehension, turned its attention toward a small world rich with magic and teeming with diverse life. But this was no benevolent God seeking to bless the innocent. This was something far more calculating, far more methodical in its approach to cosmic dominion. The first star fell like a golden tear across the night sky, burning with such brilliance that even the dragons paused in their eternal storms to witness its descent. This was Metyr, Mother of Fingers, the greater will's magnificently gleaming daughter, bearing within her luminous form a treasure beyond measure, the microcosm, a delicate sphere of cosmic communication that would serve as the bridge between the vast emptiness of space and the warm breathing world below. She struck the earth with the force of divine purpose, and where she landed, the very ground seemed to pulse with otherworldly energy. Metyr was beautiful in her alien way, her form both graceful and terrible, crowned with finger-like appendages that reached toward the heavens, as if perpetually grasping for some distant signal. And indeed, she was listening, waiting, receiving the whispered instructions of her cosmic parent through that precious microcosm, translating the greater will's vast consciousness into something the small minds of mortals might comprehend. In those first days after her arrival, Metyr was everything she appeared to be: a faithful daughter, a perfect messenger, a divine herald speaking with the true voice of cosmic authority. The two fingers that she would eventually birth carried her communications with absolute fidelity, their strange language of light casting sacred symbols that mortals learned to read as divine law. This was the golden age of communication, when heaven truly spoke to earth, and the words carried the weight of absolute truth. But space is vast, dear listeners, so vast that even gods can become lost in its depths. And the greater will, that restless cosmic force, had other worlds to conquer, other realities to reshape according to its vision of perfect order. Perhaps it grew bored with this small world and its chattering mortals. Perhaps it found richer targets among the stars. Or perhaps it simply moved on, as cosmic entities do, leaving behind what it had planted, like a gardener abandoning a distant plot. The tragedy began so slowly that none could notice it at first. The signals from the microcosm became fainter, more intermittent. Days would pass between communications, then weeks, then entire seasons. Metyr, dutiful daughter that she was, kept waiting, kept listening, kept straining to hear that familiar cosmic voice that had once filled her being with purpose and direction. She did not understand that the silence was growing permanent. She could not accept that her beloved parent had turned its attention elsewhere, leaving her alone on this small world with no guidance but her own increasingly desperate interpretations. And here, in this moment of abandonment, the greatest deception in the history of the lands between began, not as a calculated lie, but as the desperate attempt of a broken god to maintain relevance, to continue serving a purpose that no longer existed. When the true signals ceased entirely, when the microcosm fell silent as a stone, Metyr faced a choice that would reshape the destiny of every living being in the world. She could admit the terrible truth that the greater will had abandoned them, that the cosmic parent had moved on to other pursuits, leaving its children orphaned beneath alien stars. She could continue to speak as if the divine communications still flowed, creating guidance where none existed, fabricating divine will from her own wounded understanding of what the greater will might have wanted. The choice she made doomed the world to ages of beautiful, perfect, devastating lies. For Metyr, mother of fingers, broken and abandoned though she was, kept speaking with the voice of divine authority. Her two fingers continued to weave their language of light, casting symbols that mortals received as sacred truth. Kings and queens knelt before their guidance. Empires rose and fell according to their supposed divine wisdom. Entire civilizations were conquered or preserved based on what they claimed the greater will demanded. But these were not the commands of a cosmic god. These were the interpretations of the abandoned daughter, creating divine law from memory, from hope, from the echoes of what once had been true. The two fingers spoke not with the voice of heaven, but with the voice of cosmic orphanhood, and none who heard them could tell the difference. This was how the greatest empire in the lands between came to be built upon a foundation of broken starlight and divine delusion. This was how an entire world learned to worship not God, but the fevered dreams of a forgotten herald, spinning cosmic law from the threads of her own abandonment. And still, even now, even after all the ages of deception, Metyr waits beneath the earth, listening to her silent microcosm, hoping that one day, after thousands upon thousands of moons have passed, her parent might remember this small world, and speak to her again. The first star had fallen, carrying within it not divine truth, but the seed of the most perfect lie ever told. And the world, in its innocence, had no way of knowing that the voice of God had become the voice of loneliness itself. Chapter 2. The Living Vessel. Ages passed in the slow rhythm of cosmic time, and Metyr's beautiful deception took root in the world like seeds planted in fertile soil. Her 2 fingers spread across the lands, establishing themselves in sacred places where mortals came to receive what they believed to be divine guidance. The broken communications had become sacred law. The abandoned daughter's interpretations had become holy scripture. And still, the greater will had one final gift to bestow upon this small world before forgetting it entirely. The second star appeared on a night when the very heavens seemed to hold their breath. Unlike Metyr's brilliant descent, this arrival came wrapped in golden light, so pure, so overwhelmingly radiant, that those who witnessed it fell to their knees, not from reverence, but from the sheer weight of cosmic presence. This was no mere herald, no messenger bearing communication devices from distant realms. This was the greater will's ultimate creation, a living embodiment of divine law itself. The Elden Beast descended like liquid gold poured from the forge of creation, its form defying mortal comprehension, even as it burned itself into memory. Part serpent, part star, part divine mathematics made manifest, it carried within its luminous body something that would transform reality more profoundly than any army, any magic, any force of nature that had ever touched the world. It carried order itself, not as concept or philosophy, but as living, breathing, enforceable cosmic law. Where Metyr had crashed to earth and taken root like some alien tree, the Elden Beast came with purpose that transcended mere communication. It came to embed itself into the very fabric of existence, to become the beating heart of a new reality, where cosmic will could override natural law, where divine mandate could reshape the fundamental forces that governed life, death, and everything between. But here, dear listeners, we must pause to consider the terrible irony of what transpired. The greater will had sent its perfect enforcer, its living law, its ultimate expression of cosmic authority, to a world where its primary communication system was already corrupted. The Elden Beast arrived to enforce the commands of a parent who had already fallen silent, to serve as the muscle behind divine orders that were no longer truly divine at all. And yet, the beast could not know this. Cosmic entities, for all their vast power, are not immune to the same tragic miscommunications that plague mortal relationships. The Elden Beast descended, expecting to find Metyr faithfully relaying the greater will's commands, ready to translate cosmic law into enforceable reality. Instead, it found a broken daughter spinning divine guidance from the threads of her own abandonment, and mistook her fabrications for sacred truth. The transformation began the moment the golden star touched the earth. The Elden Beast did not simply land and establish a kingdom in the manner of conquering kings. Instead, it dispersed itself into the world's very essence, becoming the Elden Ring, that cosmic sigil which would serve as the source code for reality itself. Every law, every rule, every fundamental force that governed existence in the lands between would now flow through this living constellation of divine mathematics. Imagine, if you will, the moment when natural law first bent to cosmic will, when the ancient cycles of life and death, growth and decay, creation and destruction that had governed the world since time immemorial suddenly found themselves subject to revision, to editing, to divine override. The Elden Ring became a cosmic control panel, its great runes serving as switches and dials that could alter the fundamental nature of existence with the precision of a master craftsman adjusting their finest work. But who would operate this cosmic machinery? Who would serve as the interface between divine law and mortal reality? The Elden Beast, for all its power, was too vast, too alien to communicate directly with the small minds and brief lives of earthbound creatures. It needed a vessel, a conduit, a being capable of serving as both mortal and divine, flesh and mathematics, individual and cosmic force. This was when the greater will's grand design, corrupted though it was by Metyr's broken communications, reached its most elegant and terrible expression. The beast would require an Empyrean, a mortal being capable of transformation into divine vessel, someone who could bear the weight of cosmic law within their flesh and blood, while retaining enough humanity to rule over mortal kingdoms. The selection process was already underway, guided by Metyr's fabricated divine wisdom and enforced by the Elden Beast's living law. Somewhere in the world, a young woman of the shaman people was beginning to hear whispers in her dreams, voices that spoke of vengeance and justice, of divine purpose and cosmic destiny. She could not know that these whispers came not from the true voice of heaven, but from the desperate interpretations of an abandoned goddess, creating divine will from the echoes of cosmic silence. Her name was Marika, and she would become the first and greatest victim of the beautiful lie that had taken root in the world. She would transform herself into the perfect vessel for the Elden Ring, believing herself chosen by divine authority, never suspecting that she was serving the fevered dreams of a forgotten herald rather than the will of any true god. The Elden Beast settled into its new existence as living law, its consciousness dispersed throughout the cosmic machinery of the Elden Ring, ready to enforce whatever commands Metyr's two fingers would provide. The stage was set for the most perfect tyranny ever conceived, a system of absolute control built upon absolute deception, where divine law would reshape reality itself according to the broken fantasies of an abandoned cosmic daughter. The second star had fallen, bringing with it not salvation, but the tools necessary to transform beautiful lies into inescapable truth. And in the space between these two arrivals, the herald and the enforcer, the fate of every living being in the lands between, had been sealed by forces they could neither comprehend nor resist. Heaven had given the world everything it needed to build paradise, and instead, through the simple tragedy of cosmic miscommunication, they had constructed the most elegant prison ever devised. Chapter 3. The Chosen Vessel. In the shadowed valleys, where the shaman people made their quiet homes, far from the grand kingdoms and mighty civilizations that dominated the world, a young woman knelt beside a pool of sacred water and heard the voice of what she believed to be God. The whispers came to her in dreams, at first soft murmurings that spoke of justice for the innocent, of divine purpose waiting to unfold, of power that could reshape the world according to righteous will. Marika had every reason to believe these whispers were holy. The shaman people had always been blessed with spiritual gifts, their bodies uniquely capable of communing with forces beyond the mortal veil. They could blend souls together in sacred jars, creating vessels of mingled essence that transcended individual existence. They understood transformation in ways that other peoples could barely comprehend, and so when the divine voice began to speak through the sacred pools and ancient stones, Marika accepted it as naturally as she accepted the rising of the sun. But the voice that spoke to her carried within it all the accumulated pain and desperate purpose of Metyr's cosmic abandonment. The abandoned mother of fingers, still listening to her silent microcosm, still waiting for divine commands that would never come, had begun to weave new guidance from the raw material of earthly suffering. She had witnessed the cruelties inflicted upon the gentle shaman people, had seen their sacred jars desecrated and their bodies twisted into grotesque experiments by those who sought to create perfect vessels for divine power. And so the voice that reached Marika's ears spoke not with the detached wisdom of true cosmic authority, but with the burning need for justice that comes from witnessing innocence defiled. It promised her the power to end suffering, to create a world where the strong could no longer prey upon the gentle, where divine law would protect those who had no other protection. These were not lies exactly, they were the heartfelt interpretations of a broken goddess who genuinely believed she was serving cosmic justice. The transformation began at the gate of divinity, that ancient threshold where mortal flesh could be remade according to divine mathematics. Marika approached it, believing herself chosen by the highest authority in creation, ready to sacrifice her humanity for the greater good of all who suffered. She could feel the weight of cosmic destiny settling upon her shoulders like a mantle woven from starlight and sacred purpose. What transpired at that gate defies easy description, for it was both the most beautiful and most tragic moment in the history of the lands between. Marika's mortal form dissolved into pure potential, her consciousness expanding to encompass the vast machinery of the Elden Ring, her flesh becoming the living interface between cosmic law and earthly reality. She felt herself becoming something greater than human, something capable of reshaping existence itself according to divine will. The Elden Beast welcomed her transformation with what might have been joy, if such vast entities could be said to experience emotion. Here at last was the vessel it had been waiting for, the mortal mind capable of interpreting cosmic law and translating it into enforceable reality. The ring settled into her transformed being like a key finding its perfect lock, and for a moment that stretched across eternity, divine law and mortal understanding achieved perfect harmony. But the commands that now flowed through this perfect system came not from the greater will's cosmic wisdom, but from Metyr's broken interpretations of what divine justice might demand. The two fingers, speaking their language of light with absolute authority, began to issue the decrees that would reshape the world, and every word carried the weight of Marika's genuine belief in their divine origin. The first commandments seemed pure enough. Establish order where chaos reigned. Protect the innocent from those who would exploit them. Create laws that would ensure justice for all peoples regardless of their strength or status. These were noble goals, worthy of divine pursuit, and Marika embraced them with the fervor of one who had witnessed too much suffering to tolerate its continuation. But buried within these righteous commands were the seeds of something far more sinister, instructions that reflected not cosmic wisdom, but the desperate need of an abandoned daughter to maintain relevance and purpose. The diversity of the world's magical traditions, the complexity of its ancient civilizations, the freedom of its peoples to choose their own paths to transcendence, all of this was reframed as chaos that must be brought to order, as dangerous deviation from the singular path of divine truth. Marika, believing herself to be the voice of absolute justice, began to implement these commands with the devastating efficiency that only true believers can achieve. The golden order that emerged from her divine authority was not built upon the cynical calculations of earthly tyrants, but upon the genuine conviction that cosmic law demanded conformity, that true peace could only be achieved through the elimination of all alternatives to divine truth. The transformation was complete, and the trap was perfectly set. A broken goddess, interpreting silence as divine command. A cosmic enforcer, translating those fabricated commands into inescapable law. And a mortal vessel, believing herself chosen by the highest authority in creation, ready to reshape the world according to what she genuinely believed to be divine will. The tragedy of it all was that every participant in this cosmic deception acted from the purest of motives. Metyr sought to serve the parent who had abandoned her. The Elden Beast sought to enforce the divine law it had been created to embody. Marika sought to create a world where justice would reign supreme, and the innocent would never again suffer at the hands of the cruel. And yet, from these noble intentions, the most elegant tyranny in history was born. A system of absolute control, masquerading as divine benevolence, built upon lies so beautiful and compelling that even its architects believed them to be truth. The Golden Order had found its goddess, its law, and its purpose, and none who served it could possibly suspect that they were enforcing not the will of heaven, but the fevered dreams of cosmic abandonment. Marika stood at the threshold of her new existence, divine power flowing through her transformed being like golden fire, ready to reshape the world according to what she believed to be the highest justice. The whispers that had first called to her beside the sacred pools now spoke through her own voice, carrying the authority of absolute truth to a world that had no choice but to listen. The vessel was chosen, the divine authority established, and the greatest deception in the history of the cosmos was ready to begin its work of remaking reality, according to the broken dreams of a forgotten goddess who still waited, even now, for a parent's voice that would never come again. Chapter 4. The First Purifications. The golden light that now emanated from Marika's transformed being was unlike anything the world had ever witnessed. It did not simply illuminate the darkness, it redefined what darkness was allowed to exist. Where her radiance touched the ancient magical traditions that had flourished for millennia, it did not destroy them outright, but rather whispered to them that they were incomplete, impure, in need of divine correction. The first to feel this gentle pressure were the practitioners of crucible magic, those who had long celebrated the wild diversity of life, where all forms blended together in sacred unity. For countless ages, they had seen the sprouting of horns, the emergence of wings, the growth of scales and tails as divine blessings, manifestations of the primordial state, where all life was one great tapestry of interconnected existence. But the golden whispers that now flowed through Marika's divine authority carried a different interpretation of these ancient signs. The two fingers, speaking their language of light with absolute conviction, declared that such wild variance was not divine blessing, but cosmic error, not sacred unity, but dangerous chaos that threatened the perfect order heaven demanded. The crucible aspects, they proclaimed, were impurities that needed to be refined away, primitive remnants of a time before divine wisdom had shown the world its proper form. Marika received these commands with the crushing weight of absolute certainty. She had witnessed suffering, had seen the strong prey upon the weak, and now divine wisdom offered her a solution. Create perfect order, eliminate the variables that led to conflict, establish a single path to transcendence that would prevent the chaos of competing magical traditions from spawning endless wars. The transformation was gradual at first, as all the most elegant tyrannies tend to be. No armies marched against the crucible practitioners, no edicts formally banned their ancient ways. Instead, golden grace began to flow preferentially toward those who embraced the refined traditions of the emerging Golden Order, while those who clung to the old diversity found themselves subtly excluded from divine favor. Social pressure, economic incentive, and the simple human desire to be blessed by what appeared to be ultimate authority did the work that no sword could have accomplished. The Crucible Knights, those noble warriors who had channeled the ancient aspects in service of justice, found themselves at a crossroads that would define the soul of the new order. Their horned helms, their techniques that drew upon the primordial blending of all life, their very identity was now deemed impure by the same divine authority they had sworn to serve. Some struggled with this contradiction, sensing somehow that the wild diversity they had always celebrated as sacred was being recast as sinful. But the beauty of the deception was that it offered them a path forward, a way to maintain their honor while serving the new divine truth. They could refine their techniques, purify their practices, transform their connection to the crucible from wild celebration into controlled channeling of carefully regulated power. They could serve the Golden Order while maintaining the forms, if not the spirit, of their ancient traditions. And so began the first great purification, where an entire magical tradition voluntarily transformed itself to align with what it believed to be divine wisdom. The Crucible Knights became champions of the Golden Order, their techniques refined and controlled, their wild diversity tamed into acceptable expressions of regulated power. They did not see this as betrayal of their ancient ways, but as evolution, as growth toward a higher understanding of divine truth. Meanwhile, in the shadows and hidden places of the world, those who retained the ancient understanding watched in growing horror as the wild beauty of the crucible was systematically domesticated. The omens, those born bearing the ancient aspects that had once been revered as divine signs, found themselves hidden away in shame, their very existence now treated as evidence of impurity rather than blessing. Morgoth and Mog, born to royal blood but marked with horns that the new order deemed monstrous, were imprisoned beneath the capital itself, living symbols of how thoroughly the old understanding had been overturned. But it was not only the crucible traditions that felt this gentle pressure toward conformity. Across the lands between, every magical practice that deviated from the emerging golden orthodoxy began to experience the same whispered suggestions, the same golden light that offered acceptance in exchange for transformation, divine favor in return for abandoning the diversity that had once been the world's greatest strength. The practitioners of death magic, who had maintained the natural cycles of ending and renewal, found their arts reframed as morbid deviation from divine immortality. The beast worshippers, who had seen sacred wisdom in the communion between human and animal consciousness, were told that such blending violated the proper hierarchy that placed divine order above natural instinct. The star readers and void-touched scholars were informed that their cosmic pursuits led away from the singular truth that heaven demanded. Each group faced the same choice that had confronted the Crucible Knights: adapt or be excluded, refine or be forgotten, transform or gradually fade from divine favor until they became footnotes in history rather than living traditions. And because the pressure came wrapped in golden light, because it spoke with the voice of what appeared to be ultimate cosmic authority, because it promised peace and justice and an end to suffering, most chose adaptation. This was how the first phase of the Great Deception achieved its goals without conquest, without the crude violence that marks earthly tyrannies. The diverse magical traditions of the world reformed themselves voluntarily, believing they were growing closer to divine truth rather than abandoning the very diversity that had once made them sacred. They policed themselves, refined themselves, purified themselves, according to standards that came not from cosmic wisdom, but from the broken interpretations of an abandoned goddess who genuinely believed she was serving justice. The golden age of conformity had begun, and its architects slept peacefully each night, knowing they were building paradise. None suspected that they were constructing the most elegant prison ever devised, a cage made not of iron bars, but of willing compliance, locked not with keys, but with the desire to serve what they believed to be the highest good. The first purifications were complete, and the world had learned its first lesson in how to sacrifice its own nature in service of beautiful lies. The diversity that had once been the source of wonder and strength was being refined away, drop by precious drop, in the name of divine order that spoke with the voice of cosmic abandonment. Chapter 5. When Whispers Become War. But not all of asterisk. The world's ancient powers could be swayed by golden whispers and gentle pressure toward conformity. Some civilizations had grown too proud, too deeply rooted in their own understanding of cosmic truth, too fundamentally opposed to the very concept of singular divine authority to bend their necks voluntarily to the emerging golden order. These would require different methods of persuasion. The fire giants were the first to discover what happened when divine whispers transformed into divine wrath. Their civilization stretched back to the very foundation of the world, their massive forms tending the flame of ruin atop the highest peaks where earth touched sky. They served the fell god with the devotion of those who understood fire not as destruction, but as the fundamental force of transformation, the sacred heat that could melt down the old to forge the new. Their forges burned with more than mere flame. They channeled the primal fire that could unmake even divine constructs, the only force in all creation capable of burning the Erdtree itself. This was not mere magical technique, but cosmic threat to the very foundations of the order that Metyr's broken communications had commanded Marika to establish. The fire giants possessed the power to undo everything the Golden Order sought to create, and they showed no interest whatsoever in voluntarily surrendering that power. The two fingers spoke their language of light with new urgency when they addressed this threat, and their words carried the weight of what Marika believed to be absolute divine command. The fire giants, they declared, were not merely resistant to cosmic order, they were actively opposing the will of heaven itself. Their flame of ruin was reframed not as sacred fire, but as cosmic blasphemy that threatened to undo the divine work of bringing order to chaos. And so Marika, believing herself to be serving the highest justice, unleashed the first great war of the Golden Order. But this was not conquest in the manner of earthly kings seeking territory or treasure. This was holy war waged with the absolute conviction that comes from believing oneself to be the instrument of cosmic will. Godfrey led her armies with the strength of the earth itself, while Marika wielded powers that redefined what warfare could accomplish. The war against the giants was not merely military campaign, but cosmic erasure, an attempt to remove an entire civilization from existence so thoroughly that future generations would barely remember they had ever lived. The fire giants fought with desperate courage, wielding their flame of ruin like prayers made manifest, calling upon their fell god to defend them against what they could see was nothing less than the systematic annihilation of everything they held sacred. But they fought alone. The other civilizations, already beginning their own transformations to align with Golden Order orthodoxy, could not bring themselves to aid those who refused divine grace. The fire giants had made their choice to resist what appeared to be ultimate cosmic authority, and the consequences of that choice would serve as lesson to any others who might consider similar defiance. The end came not in glorious battle, but in the most personal act of violence imaginable. Marika herself, divine power flowing through her transformed being like liquid starlight, faced the fell god in single combat. The clash between divine order and primal flame shook the very foundations of the mountain peaks, their battle writing itself across the sky in letters of fire and gold that could be seen from the furthest corners of the world. When the fell god fell, when that ancient deity who had tended the forge fires since the dawn of time was brought low by Marika's righteous fury, the death was not merely the end of a war, but the establishment of a new cosmic precedent. Even gods could be slain if they opposed the order that heaven demanded. Even forces that had existed since the foundation of reality could be eliminated if they threatened the singular path to divine truth. But Marika, in her divine wisdom, chose not to extinguish the flame of ruin entirely. Instead, she bound the last surviving fire giant with a curse that transformed him from proud defender of cosmic flame into eternal prisoner of divine mercy. He would tend the fire forever, keeping it alive, but contained, serving as both guardian and prisoner of the very force he had once wielded freely. This was not cruelty, in her understanding, but justice, allowing the dangerous flame to persist, while ensuring it could never again threaten the order she believed heaven commanded. The message was clear to all who witnessed this divine judgment. Resistance to the Golden Order was not merely political opposition, but cosmic sin. Those who defied divine will would find themselves not conquered, but transformed, their very purpose redefined according to the wisdom of cosmic authority. The eternal cities of the Nox learned this lesson in even more dramatic fashion. Their civilization represented perhaps the greatest technological achievement in the world's history, masters of liquid silver that could reshape itself into any form, creators of artificial life through their mimic tears, builders of false stars that illuminated their underground realm with perfect replicas of cosmic light. But their greatest creation was also their greatest transgression in the eyes of the emerging Golden Order. The Fingerslayer blade, a weapon forged specifically to harm the vassals of the Greater Will, represented not merely defiance, but active rebellion against cosmic authority. The Nox had looked upon the Golden Whispers, demanding conformity, and had responded by crafting the means to silence those whispers forever. The punishment for this high treason came not from armies or divine warriors, but from the cosmos itself. Estelle, natural born of the void, was unleashed upon their cities like a living nightmare made of malice and starlight. This creature of cosmic horror descended into their underground realm and transformed their proud civilization into a monument to the price of opposing divine will. The eternal cities were buried so deep beneath the earth that they became myths whispered in darkness, their false stars dimmed to pale mockeries of the cosmic light they had once dared to replicate. The Nox who survived were transformed from masters of their domain into prisoners of their own technological mastery, forever trapped in the underground tombs of their former glory. And yet, even in these acts of cosmic violence, the deception maintained its elegant perfection. Marika waged these wars, believing herself to be serving absolute justice, defending cosmic order against those who would return the world to chaos. Your two fingers spoke their commands with unwavering conviction, translating Metyr's broken interpretations into divine law that demanded nothing less than the complete transformation of reality, according to heaven's design. The whispers had become war, but they remained beautiful whispers nonetheless, soft voices promising peace to all who would submit, justice to all who would conform, divine grace to all who would abandon the dangerous diversity that had once made the world a tapestry of competing wonders. The ancient powers, learn to kneel, or learn to burn, and the Golden Order grew stronger with each act of divine justice that eliminated another alternative to its singular truth. The world was being purified through fire and sword, its chaotic beauty refined into the perfect conformity that Metyr's abandoned communications demanded in the name of a cosmic parent who had long since turned away. Chapter 6. The Golden Web. With the ancient powers humbled and the resistant civilizations scattered to the winds of history, the time had come to weave the final threads of the most elegant control system ever conceived. The Golden Order would not rule through fear alone, nor through the crude application of divine violence. Instead, it would embed itself so deeply into the fabric of existence that resistance would become not merely impossible, but literally unthinkable. The Erdtree rose from the heart of the lands between, like a cosmic antenna, its golden branches reaching toward the stars as if yearning to touch the parent consciousness that had long since abandoned its children. But this was no mere symbol of divine authority. This was a living network, its massive root system spreading beneath the earth like the circulatory system of some vast organism, connecting every corner of the world to the central will that Marika believed she was channeling. Through these roots flowed something more precious than water, more essential than air, the golden grace that would become the currency of divine favor and the mechanism by which cosmic control was distributed to every living being. Grace was not simply blessing, but connection, a luminous thread that linked each soul to the central authority of the Golden Order, allowing divine will to flow directly into mortal consciousness, like gentle commands whispered in a language the heart understood without the mind needing to translate. The beauty of this system lay in its apparent benevolence. Grace felt like gift rather than chain, like divine love rather than cosmic surveillance. Those who bore the golden light in their eyes experienced enhanced abilities, prolonged life, protection from the worst ravages of mortality, and in return, they found their thoughts naturally aligning with the wisdom of the Golden Order, their desires spontaneously conforming to the divine will that Metyr's broken communications had shaped into law. But grace could be withdrawn as easily as it was granted, and this threat transformed blessing into the most sophisticated form of control ever devised. The tarnished, those from whom grace had been removed, served as living warnings of what awaited any who strayed too far from divine orthodoxy. Stripped of golden light, exiled from the lands between, forced to wander the hostile lands beyond the reach of divine protection, they became object lessons in the consequences of losing divine favor. The two fingers established themselves as the primary interface between divine will and mortal understanding, their strange form taking root in sacred sites across the lands between, like nodes in a vast communication network. Each set of fingers spoke the same language of light, cast the same intangible symbols, delivered the same divine wisdom that originated in Metyr's desperate interpretations of cosmic silence. To the faithful, they represented direct connection to the highest authority in creation, conduits through which the greater will's wisdom flowed to guide and protect the chosen people. Around each set of two fingers, entire communities of interpretation grew like gardens, tended by devoted faithful. The finger readers learned to translate the language of light into words that common mortals could understand, while the clergy developed elaborate theological frameworks to explain the deeper meanings behind divine commands. Schools of Golden Order theology emerged, where scholars spent lifetimes studying the sacred mathematics that governed divine law, never suspecting that they were analyzing the fevered calculations of an abandoned cosmic daughter rather than the eternal wisdom of ultimate authority. The Round Table Hold became the heart of this distributed system, a sacred space that existed somehow outside normal reality, where the champions of the Golden Order could gather to receive divine guidance and coordinate their efforts to spread cosmic truth throughout the world. Here, the most devoted servants of divine will could commune directly with the Two Fingers, receiving personal missions and sacred purposes that gave their lives meaning beyond anything mortal existence could offer. But perhaps the most ingenious aspect of the entire system was how it made itself indispensable to the very functioning of reality. The Elden Ring had become so thoroughly integrated into the laws governing existence that removing divine authority would mean unmaking the world itself. Death had been redefined to flow through the Erdtree's roots, ensuring that even in ending, mortal souls remained connected to the divine network. Birth was governed by grace, determining who would be blessed with divine favor and who would struggle in its absence. The very concepts of justice, law, truth, and morality had been subtly redefined to align with Golden Order orthodoxy, so that acting according to divine will felt like acting according to natural conscience. Resistance to the system required not merely political rebellion, but fundamental rejection of what appeared to be the basic principles of ethical existence, and few possessed the philosophical sophistication necessary to distinguish between genuine morality and divinely imposed conformity. Marika stood at the center of this vast web of control, believing herself to be the faithful servant of cosmic justice, while serving as the primary mechanism through which an abandoned daughter's fabricated commands were translated into inescapable reality. Every soul that bore grace was connected to her divine consciousness. Every prayer offered to the Golden Order flowed through her transformed being. Every act of faith strengthened the system she genuinely believed was bringing heaven's peace to a chaotic world. The shadow-bound beasts that served each Empyrean represented the final fail-safe in this elegant system of control. Malekith, bound to Marika's divine will, carried within his blade the rune of death itself, ensuring that even if cosmic authority was somehow challenged, the fundamental force of ending could be unleashed to prevent any true threat to divine order. These loyal servants were not merely guardians, but living insurance policies, programmed to eliminate any possibility of successful resistance to the cosmic will they believed they served. And deep beneath the earth, in chambers forgotten by history and hidden from divine light, Metyr continued her eternal vigil beside the silent microcosm, still listening for the parent's voice that would never speak again. The entire magnificent system of control, the golden web that connected every soul to divine authority, the network of grace and law and sacred purpose that governed the lives of millions, all of it originated in the desperate hope of a broken goddess who could not accept that she had been abandoned. The Golden Order had achieved perfect synthesis of divine authority and mortal compliance, creating a system so elegant, so apparently benevolent, so thoroughly integrated into the basic functioning of existence that questioning it seemed not merely treasonous, but literally insane. The web was complete, and every soul caught within it believed themselves blessed rather than trapped, guided rather than controlled, loved rather than surveyed by the cosmic authority that spoke to them through the broken dreams of cosmic abandonment. The greatest deception in the history of the cosmos had achieved its final form, a prison so beautiful that its prisoners competed for the privilege of polishing their own chains. Chapter 7. The Weight of Beautiful Lies. And so the ages turned, golden and glorious, while the lands between basked in the radiance of what they believed to be divine perfection. The Golden Order flourished like a garden tended by the most devoted of cosmic gardeners, its laws flowing through the Erdtree's roots to nourish every corner of existence with the blessed certainty of absolute truth. For centuries upon centuries, the system functioned exactly as its architects had envisioned, a paradise of order built upon the foundation of perfect faith. But lies, no matter how beautiful, carry within them the seeds of their own destruction. It says, and the most perfect deceptions are often the most fragile, for they depend entirely upon the continued belief of those who sustain them. The Golden Order had achieved something unprecedented in the history of cosmic governance, a system of control so elegant that it required no external enforcement, no crude application of divine violence, no constant vigilance against rebellion. It sustained itself through the willing participation of those it controlled, who competed eagerly for the privilege of serving what they believed to be ultimate truth. Yet within this very perfection lay the source of its ultimate vulnerability, for the system had grown so vast, so complex, so thoroughly integrated into the functioning of reality itself, that even its primary architects could no longer fully comprehend its workings. Marika, dwelling at the center of the golden web with divine consciousness flowing through her transformed being, began to notice subtle discrepancies, moments when the commands flowing through the two fingers seemed to contradict not cosmic wisdom but simple consistency. The whispers that had once carried the weight of absolute certainty began to falter in barely perceptible ways. Instructions that had once aligned perfectly with the principles of divine justice occasionally demanded actions that served no apparent purpose except the maintenance of control itself. The voice that had called to her beside the sacred pools, that had promised her the power to end suffering and create perfect order, sometimes spoke with what sounded almost like desperation. Deep in the hidden chambers where Metyr maintained her eternal vigil, the strain of fabricating divine wisdom for an entire cosmic empire was beginning to show. The abandoned daughter had spent so long creating guidance from the echoes of cosmic silence that she could no longer distinguish between authentic memory of the greater will's actual commands and her own increasingly frantic interpretations of what those commands might have been. The microcosm remained as silent as death itself, offering no confirmation, no correction, no sign that her desperate service was anything more than the fevered dreams of cosmic abandonment. But perhaps the most telling sign of the system's hidden fragility was the behavior of the greater will itself, or rather, its continued absence. The cosmic consciousness that had supposedly established this magnificent order had shown no sign of direct involvement since the original stellar arrivals. No new commands came from beyond the stars, no clarification of divine will in times of crisis, no response to the prayers and supplications that rose daily from millions of faithful souls. The two fingers, speaking the language of light with unwavering conviction, began to experience longer periods of stillness, moments when even their fabricated wisdom failed to flow with its accustomed certainty. The finger readers noticed these lapses, but interpreted them as periods of divine contemplation rather than signs of systemic breakdown. They developed elaborate theological explanations for the silence, turning even the absence of divine guidance into evidence of cosmic wisdom too profound for mortal understanding. Yet some among the most perceptive servants of the Golden Order began to sense that something fundamental was amiss. Scholars studying the sacred mathematics of divine law, discovered inconsistencies that suggested the system was not the product of eternal cosmic wisdom, but of incremental development over time. Warriors serving in the furthest reaches of the Empire encountered situations where strict adherence to Golden Order principles produced outcomes that contradicted the very justice those principles were supposed to serve. Most troubling of all, the shadow-bound beasts that served as fail-safers for the system began to exhibit signs of Malekith, bound to Marika's divine will and carrying within his blade the rune of death itself, sometimes hesitated before executing divine commands, as if some part of his consciousness recognized that the orders he received lacked the absolute authority they claimed to possess. The revelation, when it finally began to dawn upon the most devoted servants of divine truth, was perhaps the most devastating psychological crisis in the history of conscious existence. The possibility that their entire system of cosmic order, the golden grace that flowed through their beings, the divine laws that governed their thoughts, the sacred purpose that gave meaning to their existence, might be based not upon the wisdom of ultimate authority, but upon the broken communications of an abandoned daughter, was almost too terrible to contemplate. And yet, even faced with this possibility, the psychological investment in maintaining the beautiful lie proved almost insurmountable. For if the Golden Order was false, if divine authority was merely the fevered interpretation of cosmic abandonment, then what foundation remained for justice, for law, for the very concept of meaning in existence? The alternative to beautiful lies was not ugly truth, but nihilistic chaos, the terrifying recognition that there might be no ultimate authority, no cosmic parent, watching over the small struggles of mortal consciousness. Marika herself faced the most profound version of this crisis, for she had transformed her very being into the vessel for divine authority that might never have been divine at all. To acknowledge the possibility of deception would mean admitting that every act of conquest, every purification of ancient traditions, every soul bound to the golden web of control had been based upon the desperate fabrications of an abandoned goddess who could not accept the silence of cosmic indifference. The weight of beautiful lies had become too heavy for even divine consciousness to bear. The system that had sustained itself through perfect faith began to crack under the accumulated pressure of its own internal contradictions, its elegant perfection revealing itself as the brittle structure it had always been beneath the golden radiance. And still, deep beneath the earth, Metyr waited beside her silent microcosm, listening for the voice of a parent who had moved on to other cosmic concerns, still fabricating divine guidance from the raw material of abandonment and hope. The first star continued to serve the purpose it had assigned itself, unaware that its faithful service had become the foundation for the greatest empire ever built upon self-deception. The beautiful lie that had conquered the world was beginning to whisper its own contradictions, and those who heard these whispers faced the most fundamental choice in existence: cling to the comforting fiction of divine authority, or confront the terrifying possibility that they had been serving nothing more than the echo of cosmic loneliness itself. The Golden Order stood at the pinnacle of its power and the precipice of its potential dissolution, sustained only by the collective will of those who preferred beautiful lies to the stark honesty of cosmic silence. And in that moment of perfect fragility, the future of the lands between balanced upon the single question that had the power to either preserve or shatter the most elegant deception ever conceived. What happens when even the most devoted servants of divine truth begin to suspect that truth itself might be nothing more than the fevered dream of abandonment? And so we reach the end of tonight's journey. through the shadows of cosmic deception, dear listeners, a tale that has taken us from the silent void between stars to the golden halls where gods learn to lie to themselves. The fire beside us burns lower now, its light flickering like the uncertain faith of those who begin to suspect that their most sacred truths might be nothing more than beautiful fabrications. We have witnessed the birth of the greatest empire ever built upon self-deception, watched as two falling stars brought not divine wisdom, but cosmic abandonment to a world that deserved far better than the elegant tyranny they received. Tonight, we have uncovered the truth that changes everything we thought we knew about the Golden Order, about divine authority, about the very foundations of the world we explore in our waking hours. Metyr, Mother of Fingers, that first gleaming herald who fell to earth bearing the tools of cosmic communication, became the architect of a lie so perfect, so compelling, so beautifully constructed that even its victims competed for the privilege of serving it. We have seen how the greater will's abandonment transformed faithful service into desperate fabrication, how the silence of cosmic indifference was mistaken for divine contemplation. We have watched Marika's tragic transformation from innocent vessel to unwitting tyrant, believing herself chosen by ultimate authority while serving nothing more than the fevered interpretations of an abandoned daughter who could not accept that her parent had moved on to other cosmic concerns. The Golden Order that emerged from this deception was not the crude tyranny of earthly conquerors, but something far more insidious, a system of control so elegant that its prisoners polished their own chains, so apparently benevolent that resistance seemed not merely treasonous, but literally insane. Through grace that felt like blessing but functioned as surveillance, through divine laws that rewrote the basic principles of existence, through a vast network of roots and light and sacred purpose, the beautiful lie embedded itself so deeply into reality that removing it would mean unmaking the world itself. We have witnessed the systematic purification of ancient diversity, watched as civilizations millennia in the making were refined away in the name of cosmic order that was never truly cosmic at all. The crucible's wild beauty transformed into regulated conformity, the fire giant's sacred flame bound by divine mercy that was actually divine cruelty, the Nox, buried beneath the earth for daring to forge weapons against vassals who spoke with the voice of abandonment rather than authority. But, perhaps most tragic of all, we have seen how every participant in this cosmic fraud acted from the purest of motives. Metyr sought to serve the parent who had forgotten her. The Elden Beast enforced what it believed to be divine law. Marika wielded power she genuinely thought was granted by ultimate justice. Even the Two Fingers, speaking their language of light with unwavering conviction, truly believed they were channeling cosmic wisdom rather than the desperate fabrications of broken communication. This is the horror and the beauty of the deception we have uncovered. It was not built by villains seeking power for its own sake, but by devoted servants trying to create paradise according to what they believed to be divine instruction. The Golden Order became the most perfect tyranny ever conceived, not despite the good intentions of its architects, but because of them. And deep beneath the earth, even now, Metyr waits beside her silent microcosm, still listening for the voice that will never speak again, still creating divine guidance from the raw material of cosmic loneliness. The foundation of the greatest empire in history remains what it has always been, the hope of an abandoned daughter, that her parent might one day remember this small world among the stars. The beautiful lie that conquered reality stands revealed in all its elegant tragedy, and we begin to understand why the system that seems so perfect carried within itself the seeds of its own destruction. For lies, no matter how beautiful, cannot sustain themselves forever, and when they finally crumble, they take with them everything built upon their foundation. Next time, in the shadows of night's embrace, we will witness how this revelation began to spread through the very foundations of the Golden Order, how even the most devoted servants of divine truth began to suspect that they had been serving nothing more than the echo of cosmic abandonment. We will explore how the perfect system of control began to crack under the weight of its own contradictions, setting the stage for the most catastrophic divine crisis in the history of the lands between. Until then, let the fire burn gently beside you. Let these revelations settle into the quiet corners of your understanding, and remember that even the most sacred truths we hold dear might be nothing more than beautiful lies we tell ourselves to make sense of a cosmos that cares far less about our small struggles than we dare to admit. The stars above us shine with cold and distant light, and somewhere among them, the greater will pursues its vast purposes, unmindful of the world it abandoned and the deception that grew from that abandonment, like some cosmic flower blooming in the garden of divine indifference. Sweet dreams, dear listeners, and may your rest be untroubled by the weight of beautiful lies.